everyone. Obviously, my name's Craig Anderson. I'm delighted to be here to moderate this panel of experienced and emerging young brokers. We ran a similar session for this in New South Wales for our young professionals, and I got in trouble for making fun of Eric's age way too many times. So I promise none today at all. I absolutely promise. So look, we've just heard from the NIBA Insights survey. It was a really vivid picture of the challenges and opportunities that the broking community see and respond to. I guess the key things that popped out to me were technology and automation, regulatory demands, new risks, industry consolidation, and really the emerging expectations of our clients. And so really the idea behind the panel is we've heard a lot of information today and a lot of stories about what's going on more broadly, but to find out what the brokers today are doing to really box that around and to be a successful broker, not only today, but really into the future. So I might start with probably the most experienced panelist over the last 12 months, Emily Rose. You've done a lot. I've seen you everywhere. Our reigning and defending Warren Tickle Memorial holder, obviously at Austbrokers AEI. I know you've previously worked at an insurer, and then you made a transition across into insurance broking. Why that? What was it about broking that really caught your eye? And what's been the biggest challenge that you had for that initial transition, if you can cast your mind back?
My first job was an assistant underwriter, and it was basically the mailroom. Like, I was just opening mail and I was going to literally the stackers, the hard copy files. I was finding the mail, putting it on the underwriter's desk, waiting for them to process it, and going back and putting the files back. And that was so boring. And I started reading the closings and the mail. I started to absorb all the information that was there. I started reading the ANZIC book. I started it when I was 17. And I realized I was pretty interested in the complexity of it. And then I started to get on the phones and I started to talk to brokers. And I realized that I was a pretty good self-learner. Like, I was able to find something that was interesting and learn all about it. And then within 7 to 9 months, a job became available within the business for an underwriter. And I said, I'd like to apply for that. And they said, no way. We need somebody with way more experience and it's just not you. And I said, oh, okay. So I said, and then I watched people come through and I said, no, I'd like to apply for it. I think you'll be surprised how much I've been able to absorb. And they're like, nah, look, sorry. Just keep at it. And then I started to see the people coming in for the interviews and I just said, you know what, I'm going to apply for it anyway. And then they have no choice but to interview me. And then I think during the interview, they realized how much technical knowledge I had absorbed in such a short time. And they asked me a series of questions that was so difficult, and I hated that feeling of not knowing the answer. And I think that's also where the love of being able to know and know what I was talking about became. And then I got the job. And then fast forward 10 years, I had a successful career within insurance as an underwriter. I got tapped on the shoulder by a local brokerage. So nothing really drew me to the broking, but I was drawn to the insurance world with the complexity and the clients that were brokers at the time. But the broker said to me, and we just really need the service that you give us. We need that level of service for our clients. And I was like, okay. So then it became customer service. And then I was able to go out and speak to clients, and that's where I found my true calling. I really fell in love with business. I became fascinated with the clients, their business. I could ask them questions that I couldn't ask them at a barbecue, a family barbecue. It was too invasive. But as a broker, I could ask under the hood. I could ask, what's your margins? What's your challenges? How are you finding staff? And that to me was fascinating. So it's a fairly long answer to say how I was drawn to broking and insurance, but ultimately it became that self-love of being able to teach myself the technical skills and being able to see business. And you did ask me what is a challenge. Sorry, that did just come back to me. Is the communication. is the level of communication. I had actually a big change because I went out to clients speaking to them like brokers, because that was the start of my career. And then a mentor said, look, you're way too corporate. You really need to tone it down a bit. And I said, okay. And that's when the penny dropped for me, that I realized I was speaking to clients like they were brokers, because brokers are 100% insurance minded. Their world is 100% insurance. But when I'm going to speak to clients, their world is like 5% insurance, 10% insurance, maybe 30% if they've had a claim. So I had to change the way I communicate in order to understand them and their business and their world. And that was a challenge, but super fun.
Thank you. Richard, I know with your most recent role with CBN, you've led the amalgamation of 3 very large broking communities. But if I can cast your mind back to your entry point into broking, and I guess, again, what was it that attracted you, and probably one of the challenges that surprised you the most when you entered?
I was working for a company called Elders then, and if you knew anything about Elders and Country Australia, there's 2 jobs in Elders you didn't want to have. One was in insurance, and the other was working in head office. And I actually got a role in head office, being in charge of insurance. So when I got into the job, the sexy things were livestock, wool, real estate, that sort of stuff. But they'd had a night of the long knives, and a few executives got marched. And I went in, and at that stage we had a commercial union agency and a national mutual agency. And at some point, fairly soon after, it became clear that we needed a placement facility to handle off-farm investments, difficult risks, etc. So we started up Elders Insurance Brokers, which was my introduction. I think 2 things really stuck with me. At that time, we'd just taken a workforce of 150 salaried salespeople and changed them to 50 commission-based salespeople, which was a big step. Elders had just been refloated. It was struggling to make a profit. This was the way of getting the cost out. So it was an interesting time for everyone to be no longer given a company car. They didn't have phones then, but no longer a company car, a wage. But when I got into the profession, the thing that dawned on me the most was how complex it is and how much you had to know to actually do the role. And I think, looking back on it now, I think that's why people had such good relationships, because you could never know everything. Therefore, you had to know someone who knew what you needed to know to get the job done. And that astounded me, that there wasn't, like, a job like being a broker needed to be a degree course at university. It was at least that complex to start with. I think the other thing was the amount of opportunity, the commercial opportunity that's there. The 50 brokers that went in and took on those Elders agencies, most of them are enormously successful people now. And in my first glimpse, when I got to look into commercial union and understand what actually happened inside an insurance company, I was astounded. There was a whole world that, even I, who was fairly worldly, I thought, and knew a lot of industries, knew just a fraction of what insurance was about. And when I finished that role, I said to myself, I'm going to come back to this one day. And that was my sort of first introduction to an authorised representative network. That was 1992. And I guess when, CBN came along, I thought, aha, this is the job I want, the last one, before I hang up my stirrups and spurs. And
I'm going to cut you off there because you're about to enter into my next question for you. So jump right there. Eric, I'm going to skip Shanique for the moment, and I'm going to go straight down to you. Again, 4 decades in insurance, across underwriting and broking. Again, a similar question. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got into insurance, and then really from the early days, the biggest challenge that you saw in broking?
And I note you didn't call my age, but just how long I've been, so you're fixing me up again. And look, I'm probably one of those people with the hand up like the net that, I joined this industry by choice. And I joined it, probably because my father had been in the industry for a long time. He was a broker. I strategically chose to go to a country branch of Commercial Union. Shepparton, to learn very early lots of different things, because Dad had sort of given me the advice, if you go into a metro branch, you'll get stuck in a department, whereas going to a country branch, you get to experience everything. And I spent a short period of time in Shepparton, which is where we'd sort of, I'd spent some of my youth where Dad had worked. But then came back to Melbourne and joined what was Baillieu, Barring, Marsh and McLennan. And I'd always wanted to get into the broking, because that's Dad had started his own firm. And I think the concept of learning, I think, was the biggest challenge. And there was a lot of conversation earlier about learning, and that the biggest challenge was getting to be technically savvy enough. And I went to the country branch to learn about claims, because, as Wendy said earlier, claims is our shop front. That's where it turns up. And knowing how a policy responds was, in my mind, the best way to be able to then be a broker. So, we did all the ANZIIF courses as they were in those days, learnt what to do, and becoming a broker and realising I didn't know much at all, as was pointed out a minute ago. And I agree with learning and knowing other people in the industry that could help you get the knowledge you need. And that's relationships I still got today. Whilst I don't broker clients and haven't for a number of years, I've got relationships with people who I was in the industry back then that we learnt together. I knew my bit of the world, they knew their bit of the world. We got together and did some great things. So I think the challenge was the learning. The challenge was recognising that. But I love the industry we've been in for a long time, and I think we bring a unique position to the community.
And Shanika, a bit different story for you. Finance in Ireland to insurance in Australia. Can you talk me through, not so much the Australia part, but obviously you had a forging finance career in Ireland. You've come over to Australia in insurance, and a bit of a unique kind of position straight up. Can you just talk about that, and then maybe the challenge that you've had in doing that?
Yeah, absolutely. I worked in a bank in Ireland for a number of years. Was actually in the bad side of banking, so it was restructuring all the failed mortgages after the lovely GFC that we had. So that was very interesting. Planned on staying in banking when I came to Australia. I absolutely loved it. I love to help people, and I thought I just found my passion with that, and wanted to get straight into it when I moved over to Ireland, and I had all my exams and the experience, and I couldn't even get an interview. Working holiday visas, they don't entertain them whatsoever. Gave insurance a go, and it was the best thing that happened. The best no interview from a bank that could have transitioned into my life, to be honest, because when I did start in insurance, the biggest difference I seen, one, with banking, it's very rigid. You can't change a lot. Even if you go in with all the energy and you're young and enthusiastic and you learn it, try and change anything in the bank, good luck. It's very hard, and it's very governed, and it's very regulated. And we are in banking, but when I moved into in insurance, the fluidity, the autonomy, the entrepreneurship is next to none. And it's not just with broking, because I'm not a broker. I've done my exams. The only thing I've broken is a nail or a heel. I haven't broken anything. In the relationship space, I find solutions. I have relationships with insurers, with brokers, and I bring them together. I'm that person in the middle, and I love that role. But yeah, to take away with the entrepreneurial part, you see it in insurance when you see underwriters going out and setting up agencies. You see brokers going out and setting up their own AO business. It's so vast. That's what stood out to me. But then also I noticed another difference in my time in banking was the way you progress is very different. It's still very old school in kind of the politics way. And that was just my experience and what I'd seen, that it wasn't that the best person for the job, but it was usually you got tapped on the shoulder because you were there the longest. Whereas I see people in the insurance industry that really put the hard yards in, and they fly, they excel. And it's great to see that if you put the work in, it gets rewarded. So that's what gravitated me towards insurance. I'll never say I fell into insurance. I think we do ourselves and the whole industry discredit when you say you fall into insurance, because there's so many roles that you don't study in school that are jobs today. But none of them say I fell into it. You don't fall into personal training. You don't fall into X, Y, or Z. But we say we fall into insurance. But We're trying to inspire the next generation. We chose to stay here. No one's hand puffing us to this industry. We're all choosing to be in this industry because we find something that we absolutely love about it. And it's so social and it's so broad that, yeah, I chose insurance by accident, but I chose to stay in it. But that's kind of what gravitated me and what I see the difference with Lyman.
It's a pretty passionate speech for someone that says they're not an insurance broker.
I know.
Anyway, Shanika, I guess I want to get down into kind of the evolving business models that we're seeing a lot of the themes through. Obviously, now you're a national leadership development manager for a large AR company, McLeod and McShane. I guess what I'm really interested in, that there's so much talk about tech and AI, and I would assume between yourself and Richard up here, there's a lot of competition for high quality ARs joining the network. How are you adapting your business model to best support them with kind of that idea of making it as easy as you can through tech and AI? Like, what are you guys doing to differentiate yourselves?
It's a great question. I think there's a balancing act between scale and personal touch. And I think if you put technology at the forefront of everything, you lose sight of what's important, which is your network. So to us, culture is primary for that business model and will always be. Second, for the AR network in itself, I think when it comes to technology, flexibility is extremely important. I don't think one solution fits all. So for us, it's having a variety of options available and not just one, because then you lose out on a lot of opportunity. On an executive level, technology is heavily invested in. We're always looking at ways to kind of remove any sort of friction for the broker, whether it's data, whether it's dashboards, whether it's automating onboarding or claims forms, anything that doesn't have collaboration, we would love to automate and make faster and efficient. Where you've got that relationships, we still make that our primary focus because that's how deals kind of get done. It's to us. So our business model will always be technology, but it will always be culture. I think as they go together, it's more connection, data driven, but it has to still remain deeply human.
Eric, I wanted to touch you on this because your title is Head of Target Operating Model and Transactions. You work at Aon. It's a huge company with massive size, scale, and diversity of client. I mean, how do you go about doing, I guess, business optimization at a level that's going to work for everyone using tech and automation, where you've got, I guess, so many different levels of service required from, I guess, your large end of town down to consumer level. So how do you go about that, and what are you doing there in that space?
Look, it's a massive thing, right? Because to your point, an organisation like Aon has such a variety of delivery models, client types, locations. We look at this in a number of ways. Technology is an enabler. Technology is not the solution for everything, because we need people to be in front of clients at certain levels. At some levels, it's a different answer. And I think, we look at this in our segmentation model, and a target operating model, starts with a segmentation, a value proposition for your clients. It's then, the processes that you follow and the technology and the data that's part of that, and then who does that work. And I think the big focus needs to be on getting the tasks in the right hands so that you have the right people doing the right jobs. And that's the advice-giving colleagues giving advice, those that do the support work doing support, making sure you've got the right technology to enable that. And that's having the technical teams to support where needed so that you can get the right level of advice in, having claims teams that help support on claims, because you can't be everything in your role. And I think that's, in an organisation like Aon, it's just not possible. Now, I would challenge that's probably everywhere, but my experience is with large multinationals. So I think where we're going with AI and all of the automations and those sort of things that are going to come and help support, they're not going to take away some of that. They're going to enable us, and they're going to help us deliver it more effectively, more efficiently, more consistently, getting the work in the right hands so that our colleagues that we work with and our clients get a better experience at the other end of that. And if we can achieve those things, that's what we're aiming to get to.
Richard, with you, a CBN, I guess, brought together 3 large broking communities under one larger banner. I could only imagine that the business models of trying to get 3 organisations of that size singing from the same hymn sheet was a logistical nightmare, but you guys have grown obviously significantly since then. How have you gone about that? And again, is tech and automation a big issue that you're seeing, a big request from the ARs in terms of when you're attracting them into the network?
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't think we would have, in fact, I can see a certain person down the front who's probably half to blame for the fact that we decided to put 3 networks together. But we didn't know what we didn't know, all right? Otherwise, there's no way in the world we ever would have attempted that. But what we had were a couple of groups of communities who had deliberately selected against each other. You know, if you were a Westcourt AR, you deliberately decided not to go to NAS, or if you were in NAS, you deliberately decided not to be part of Westcourt. And so suddenly the thought that we'd just shove them all together and everyone would be happy was a little bit naive. But what we did do is we looked very closely at why everybody was in the business, and without a doubt, there was this shared common purpose, which was the client. And everybody in the 2 networks, and I think most of the people in this room, the one thing that everyone carries is this undying commitment to getting the right outcome for their client. So we focused on purpose. That's what we did. And by focusing on purpose, we found everything that we had in common. And I think that's what took us forward. And from that day, our fundamental purpose is to help our network members succeed. That's how our remuneration structure, that's how we go to work, that's how we identify priorities. It's everything we do. And by having that kind of clarity of purpose and no complication, it allows us just to stay on track. The technology then fits in that because it is there to enable the network members to deliver the kind of service they want for their clients while still running an efficient, compliant business. But, you know, there's lots of, and we're a very broad church. We have those that are innovating at one end that are spending enormous amounts of money on their own technology development. And so we support them and enable them in that sort of broker to customer space. But there are others who are still using 20% of the capacity of Insight and have never opened the manual at the other end. So what we do, you know, what we focus on now is just making sure the technology is fit for purpose. We get a kind of standard platform, which we're continuously developing. And right now we're experimenting with our own AI robots. So we've got an AI tool that our brokers are using, a broker assistant. And we're not trying to change the world. We're trying to make sure that people are getting familiar with AI, taking the time to learn what it's about and how it works. And we've got probably 300 and something members of the network using this tool every day now. And hopefully that will encourage them to keep pace so that at some point in the future, we won't just have a giant transformation challenge where everyone has to go from zero to a new system overnight.
Drip feeding the insurance broker.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's a learning challenge, right? So,
Emily, there's a lot of commentary we've seen, I guess, today with and more broadly in the industry about the changing client expectations that we're seeing. I read an interview you did recently where you proudly turned around and said, "I'm on the tools and I want to forever be on the tools." You get a lot of enjoyment out of the client side. With your feet on the ground, day-to-day contacts with clients, are you seeing those changing client expectations? Is it just, you know, puff, or are your clients expecting something different of you than what they did 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
Thanks, Craig. I also, side note, it's so fun being up here because I can see everyone's faces and I feel like I'm going to be an appointed sergeant in arms. And if I catch you sleepy, you got to do a donation to the Pat Cronin Foundation or the Gidget Foundation. So to answer, yes, I'm on the tools. I love working with clients. I love being out on the road. I love asking them questions, and I think speed's got a lot to do with it. Like, expectations are getting higher, and that's just not just brokers, but I think it's popular culture at the moment. And I feel like there was a light bulb moment for me the other day when my kids asked me, they were like, "Oh, we want to watch Paw Patrol." And I was like, "Okay." So I went over the TV and I went to put it on. I was like, "Oh, no, you can't. The internet's down." I threw the remote and walked off. And they were and they're little, like 3 and 5. And they're like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "Oh, well, the internet's down." And they're like, "What?" I was like, "Well, we can't stream it." And then that's when I realized, I was like, these kids don't know that we had to wait. Like, we had to wait for our favorite shows to be on. We had to wait for to get home and talk on the phone. So this new generation, and as little as that, they'd never understood that everything is not instant now. And that's when I figured it out when I was talking to clients. If they're getting used to everything being instant, whereas previously everybody sent in mail and the closings to be able to bind it. Whereas now we send an email that's instant, and we expect an underwriter or someone else to be on the other line connected that's going to respond immediately. And clients are expecting that of us. We're expecting that of our insurer partners, and it makes working with each other incredibly difficult. So the strength in our profession lies with the ability to work together to share those information. And for me, it's talking to my clients and saying, "Do you need this now? Is this urgent? When do you need it?" Being able to provide that expectation, I think that is probably one of the most difficult things. I've forgotten the actual question because I was too busy
You answered it.
people sleeping, so hopefully
We got there. Well done. Shanika, I guess in your role as, I would call you Mrs. Fix-It for everything in that network. I'd assume you'd get a lot of feedback about from your ARs about what their clients want and what they need and what they need you to fix. Are you seeing a shift? Are your ARs talking to you about the clients are changing, they need something else, and how are you supporting them to respond to those?
I think even outside insurance, we're seeing a shift in how quickly we want things. When you talk about, you can have your full food shop on your door in an hour, and then we advertise turnaround times to 24 hours, but the turnaround time actually might not be an answer, it might be a question. So I think it's managing expectations is one of the biggest things. But for us as a network, our brokers are our clients. So our responsibility is education, because at the end of the day, you educate them, you give them the tools to be able to go out and explain risks to their clients and help them navigate through uncertainty, and you manage their expectations by showing them how complex the risk is, or how you manage their insurance essentially. And they can only do that if you help them in the background. And that's our role, because the broker is our client, that you make sure that you're putting on your PD days or your conferences, or you can kind of see what risks are trending, and you can help them with the consent piece and educate them through that. So we navigate them through change so they can do that for their clients. So that's where we see it. I'm always seeing brokers get out about something. So that's just the nature of it. We all love to complain about something. But it's being able to explain why something is delayed or takes this period of time, or talking them through their insurance that gives them comfort. But then you give your broker the tools and the confidence to go and do that. So it's a full circle. We help our clients, they help theirs.
Richard, I see you nodding aggressively there. Is anything different from CBN's perspective, and can you put Paw Patrol in your answer?
Absolutely. We do sometimes feel like we're in Paw Patrol, where we have to jump into our fancy cars and fly out there and save the day, don't we? But
I'm so impressed that you so impressed.
I got grandkids, and there's a choice between Peppa Pig and Paw Patrol. I go Paw Patrol anytime. But no, there's no real difference. And the thing is that there's a lot of different clients out there. They all want slightly different things. We're kind of like the flexible coupling between our network members and the insurance industry. So we have to take complex and help them make it simpler. It's never simple. Or we have to take something that's delayed and help them put it back on track, or help them explain the way it is. That's the role we play. So it is educational. And there is so much demand for advice. There's so much value put in relationships by clients with brokers. That's not changing at all. Price is an issue, but I don't hear that talked about as much as I hear talk about complexity, of process or understanding or complexity around claims settlement or delays. Things like that are far more of concern. Right?
And Eric, again, broader, client set, but anything different from your end with the evolving?
Look, and I'm not on clients day to day, but my conversation around this would be around the need to know the clients more than what we ever had to before, because of the complex nature of risk that we deal with, and being able to deliver across a broader spectrum of risk to our clients. And having the analytics to support what you're giving are the things that I think have changed and evolving at a greater rate. That analytics piece, a client has a greater expectation of us being able to give them the right advice, give them the right analytics so they can make the right decisions about their risks, whether that is transfer it, retain it, mitigate it, whatever that might look like.
Yes, I had a point. I've lost it, but it'll come back. No, it's the risk advisor. So we are we all talk about where brokers are moving will be more risk advice and to be more working with the clients within their business and not just placing business. That's happening now, and it's happening all the way down from like smaller SME guys who they come to me and say, "Hey, I'm thinking about like becoming a company. What's the benefits of being a sole trader to a company?" I was like, well, I can give you the insurance sort of ramifications and your legal obligations and what you need to do. But outside of that, that's on your own. And all the way up to the middle market, larger corporate, where they call me and say, "Hey, I'm thinking about like starting a labor hire company." I'm like, "Nah, don't do that." So like our advice,
Great advice.
depends on what your margins are and how much risk you want to take. But that's the shift we're seeing. Like those questions are outside the area of an insurance broker, but we work alongside their business that they're quite often calling us for the decisions that they're making within their business.
I might, we've got about 10 minutes left, so we've got 2 more to get through. We might just rapid fire. Eric, if you were a Paw Patrol, which one? No, sorry. I mean, let's talk about attracting and retaining talent, okay? I think it's a big issue for all of us and has been, and it feels like we talk about this every NEBA, but it's just not going away. You've chaired the NEBA Education Committee. You're an ex-NEBA president. We hear so much about the much debated talent gap. I mean, what are your views? And I guess as an industry, do you think we're doing enough? And how do you think someone could differentiate themselves in being great at attracting and retaining their top talent?
There's about 7 questions there, mate, so you've done well.
Right, a bit of in.
Look, are we doing enough? It's a tough answer because we're all different businesses and we're all trying to attract talent to us. And Vision, I think Vision is a great initiative that we're adopting as NEBA. I think we haven't been able to, and I joined the industry because I had knowledge. And I don't think the community has knowledge about what we do as brokers at the level that's going to help us attract people to it. That's fundamentally our flaw. It's not, people know other industries. They don't know insurance broking. And let's be honest, the majority of media noise about insurance is not positive because it's usually in a negative situation where something's gone wrong. So instantly we're associated with that, even though that's probably not what the insurance broking side of things is. So I think we've got a tough job. Our education side of things, I think back when I joined the industry, which as you pointed out was a long time ago, mate, learning your craft, being technically knowledgeable was an important thing. We shifted away from that, I believe, as an industry to be ticking a box from a compliance point of view. James said earlier today, we're not spending enough money on that core competency skills of being technically savvy and being brokers. I think that's where we've got to circle back to and spend more time educating our people on how to be insurance brokers. A lot of that's learning on the job, and we learn by osmosis. Working from home has an impact on that because you don't sit there and listen to the conversations that are happening next to you. You don't necessarily get out to see the clients that you might have in a previous world. So all of those things are working against us. So we've got a lot to do to get there. I don't know that there's a silver bullet answer to this. The action we're taking and what we're trying to do, getting out in front of schools, anyone would join the industry if you met Tim Wedlock at a school, wouldn't you? But it's a tough job we've got to get people to come, but I think we've got to keep working at it.
Shanika, more from I guess it's a large part of your role is attracting talent into the McLarty McShane network. What are you finding that's really moving the needle for ARs to join that? What is it where you would think that's what we've got them over the line is? What's attractive to them?
Be careful here.
I mean, you mentioned culture early is at the forefront of everything you do.
One. Culture is a massive one, and I think call a spade a spade. All the groups we generally would operate very, very similar. And me personally, in the last 12 months, I think we have seen the biggest shift in AR networks and people moving from various different groups. And what I've seen people move for, in my personal experience, is not for a margin here, there, or the other way. It's wanting to be a part of something bigger. It's wanting to be seen. It's wanting their business to feel like it's very important to you and to not feel like a number. And I think it's very, very important to be answering to your network, because that is the essence of it. And your culture is extremely important. We are humans. And what I'm seeing is that sense of purpose, flexibility, culture, and being part of something larger is what's really shifting the dial. Because at the end of the day, these are people's livelihoods. It's sometimes they've gone out on their own and they put all their eggs in one basket, and they want to be seen and know that you see them and that decision they've made and you're on the ride together. And I think that's what I've seen shift the needle recently. Yeah.
Last question. We've got a few minutes left. I'm going to ask you all the same question, and I might start with you, Emily, again to finish. Look, you're the current Warren Tickle Memorial winner. If someone was starting out today, what is your top bit of advice for someone entering our industry to have a long and successful career?
Stay curious and ask the question. Find people that you trust that you can ask the question. Like, always be learning. Network as much as you possibly can. Be active in the pursuit of hard things. Go out of your comfort zone, because that's where growth happens. We are the collective voice of our profession. We are the future. And although it can come down to business, but the only person you're competing against is who you were yesterday. And knowing your why, knowing your passion, knowing who you represent, then you'll always be successful and satisfied and fulfilled at the end of the day.
Richard?
Look, I think the most important thing to do is to waste some time and phone a customer. There's just so much emphasis on processing these days and getting business done and transacted. And yet people are talking to me about growth all the time. And in my experience, all you have to do is pick up the phone and talk to a few customers, and suddenly the opportunities just tumble in the door. So in this kind of generation that loves email, I would encourage anybody starting out to practice the age-old art of using the telephone.
And if you don't hear from your client, if you can't call your client, you can't get a hold of them, and you say, oh, I can't get a hold of them, well, then when they call you, call them back straight away. Go visit them straight away, because that's where they are in the world of insurance, and they're going to listen to you.
Yep.
Shanika?
I'll give the advice to anyone going into the insurance industry, because that's where I am, because I'm not in broking. Keep your tools sharp. Definitely. I don't think just because you've got your tier 1 or tier 2 or your diploma, that should get you by for your 30-year-long career. It's probably expired after 5 years. This industry is always changing, so you need to be on top of your craft 100% to know your game. That's what actually gives you the confidence when you deal with your clients and when you're speaking with insurers or lodging a claim. And secondly, we all get stuck in the industry. We all can't get out of it. So work-life balance is extremely important from the outset. It's extremely important to be driven, but not to the point of burnout either. I think that's extremely important to find that balance. And maybe that's through a mentor. But and then the famous one that I'll never forget is you've got 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. So listen twice as much as you speak, especially when you're starting off, because you need to be a sponge. you need to be in the office, like you said, and not working from home, because I picked up all the golden nuggets just eavesdropping or what are you doing? What was that for? And asking a question. And it's very easy to swivel your chair around and kind of hash out a problem than it is to send an email and wait for a response. So that's me.
Bring us home, Eric.
A little bit of repetition, I guess. Firstly, own your own career. No one else is going to do it for you. Take ownership. Make sure you do what you want to do, and you go and take action to make sure, because you know your company you work for isn't going to be you. That's your job. I think, know your craft. Be technically competent in what you're doing is really important, and learning that as they join the industry, that, and that's not getting tier 1 or whatever it is. It's actually learning what we do and how we do it and why we do what we do. And I think lastly, take a risk, and that doesn't, I'm not saying change firms, push yourself, take a risk and do something outside, and you'll learn and develop quicker by doing that.
Thank you all for your insights, ladies and gentlemen. Eric, Shanika, Richard, and Emily, thank you very much.